Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head back to Japan for the first time in quite a little while actually, and we've got another brewery to look at today that I have never tried anything from, so I'm really curious to see how this one turns out. This is yet another of the beers that I brought back with me from my recent trip to Kyushu in the south of Japan over the summer. So for this review then we are going to go to Kumamoto Prefecture, which is kind of in the middle of Kyushu if you like. Kyushu is almost like a little kind of horseshoe shape in some ways, but we're going to go to Kumamoto and we're visiting the Fukuda Farm Winery for the first time. As I've told you before, quite a lot of the breweries in Japan started out either as wineries or as sake brewery, but the Fukuda Farm Winery released their beers under the name Shiranui Roman beer. This particular one is the Soleil. It comes in at 5% ABV, and this one is a Hefeweizen, so yeah, curious to see how it turns out. So as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Fukuda Farm Winery and the Shiranui Roman beer range. Very first time I'm encountering these guys, as I said. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Japanese beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Fukuda Farm Winery and the Shiranui Roman beer range then. So as I mentioned to you earlier, this brewery is part of the Fukuda Farm in Minamata, which is in Kumamoto Prefecture on Kyushu in Japan. The farm itself was founded back in 1960 by Shuzo and Miha Fukuda as a tourist farm, and basically they used to get a lot of students coming there to work like summer jobs and stuff like this, but today it's home to a winery, a brewery, a restaurant and also a bakery, and it's kind of known as the Spanish Village if I'm not mistaken. But the company was later taken over by Shuzo's son Koji, and a winery was founded in 1987, and the recipes were developed over the next 3 years, and they also started producing sangria as well. The basic reason for this was that Koji and his wife Reiko honeymooned in Spain. So in 1989 they built the Valencia restaurant, which is this kind of Spanish style building, and if you go on the brewery website you'll see some pictures of this, and it's actually really quite nice. And I have to say, that's one thing the Japanese really do well. It's all called itokodori. They take things in from other countries that they see as useful to them, and you know, they develop them and kind of give them a little bit of a Japanese touch if you like. But it's this particular building that is home to the winery and the brewery. But the brewery licenses came a little bit later. They were approved in 1994, and the brewery side of things began production in 1997. Later in 2001 as well they opened up their bakery, but in 2011 Koji Fukuda died, and so the brewery passed on to his son Toyoko Fukuda, and it's continued to grow for the last few years under his guidance. In preparation for the 60th anniversary of the company, they renamed the company officially Fukuda Farm Company Limited, and they launched the local food park concept, and this is intended to promote local produce in Minamata. And today these guys have grown, you know, quite substantially from where they started. They employ around 40 different people, and they're trying to promote Kumamoto and Minamata produce around the prefecture and further afield in Kyoto and the rest of Japan actually. At the moment they're producing 5 different beers and also a hapushu as well, which is a kind of malt, it's a sort of lower malt content alcohol drink that you'll find in Japan actually. I need to see if I can review some of those for you on the channel as well. But again, this is another brewery that started out as a winery, which is pretty cool. And hopefully it's another good beer. As I said before, you can always get some really interesting beers from these little Jibiru breweries that are popping up around Japan, and it's mainly German style beer that's kind of popular with these. With most of the Jibiru breweries you'll find that it's German style beer that they're brewing. Some of them have a go at Belgians and stuff like that, like Belgian wits and things like that, but mainly it's the lower alcohol German beers, because the Japanese always appreciate a little bit of drinkability when it comes to their beers in my experience. But of course you've got the newer kind of craft breweries as well, like Tamamura Honta and Shiga Kogen, things like that, you know, that are brewing the more American styles of beer. Uchu Brewing are another one that have popped up quite recently. So yeah, to be honest with you, that's all you really need to know about Fukuda Farm Winery and the Shiranui Roman beer range. It didn't actually say on the website why they called their beers Shiranui Roman beer, there was nothing on that, but quite often, as I say, you'll have a parent company such as the Fukuda Farm, and then this brewery started off as part of the winery, and they named their beers something else, of course. You know, we see the same from the Hakkai-san factory that I reviewed one of their beers for you from recently as well. So bear that in mind when it comes to the Japanese craft beers. Quite often the beers themselves are named something rather different from the parent company, and that's just how it goes. The Japanese business scene is a little bit difficult to understand, actually. But yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. So as you can see, you know, kind of classic Japanese G-beer artwork on this one. You know, it's nicely presented. It's almost a little bit German, but at the same time the Japanese quite often like showing the, you know, the canes and stuff like that, the wheat, basically the hops and stuff like that. They like showing these kind of things on the labels here. But it says here, a delicious beer emerges from the royal blue sea and the winds of the Shiranui. This great tasting beer has been produced using hops, or using premium malt, aromatic hops, the best quality yeast and pure water combined with superior brewing technology from the Fukuda Winery. So yeah, I guess Shiranui, I looked up what the word meant before I filmed the video, and it basically means, like, you know, it means like very bright light from what I understand. So yeah, basically it's the bright light Roman beer, if you translate that. So yeah, kind of interesting. You can see also on the top there, it says Yumoko, Spain Village, Fukuda Brewery. So that's what I was mentioning earlier. They do have that kind of Spanish style building that was built by Koji and his wife Reiko back in the 80s, I believe. So yeah, without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting. As I mentioned earlier, this one is a 5% Hefeweizen, and it's one of these little pull toppy things that you sometimes find on Japanese and Russian beers, actually. But let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm curious to see how this beer turns out. I always enjoy a good Hefeweizen, and it is quite cool to go over to Japan. One of the things I've always said about Japan, actually, is that there's probably more Kölsch beers in Japan than there is actually in the city of Köln in Germany. But when you open this one up, I'll tell you straight away, you get some of those big bubblegummy notes that you expect of a Hefeweizen. Some of them can be less candied than others, of course, but this one, to me, just from pouring it, comes across as very sort of candied and bubblegummy. So yeah, as you can see with this beer, and as you'd expect from a Hefeweizen, this one's poured a lovely kind of blonde, hazy, golden yellow colour. It's actually not a million miles away from the colour that you see on the label there. I'm not sure if that is intentional or not, but you can see there's a solid 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head on this one. Not creamy at all, definitely a perfect white head. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there, but you know, overall it does look really quite nice, I have to say. This is pretty much what you would expect from a German style Hefeweizen. So yeah, just nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. If I put my fingers behind the glass, there you can see, you can get an idea of what level of haze this beer has. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. Yeah, that comes across pretty nicely, actually. And one of the things, again, one of the things I've noticed with the Japanese beers, as I mentioned to you earlier, quite often with these G-Biru breweries, you'll get the same types of flavour that you would expect from the original German ones, but sometimes the mouthfeel is just a little bit lighter, because to the Japanese, generally, beer is something that is supposed to be drinkable and to kind of clear the throat, if you like, when you're eating. So quite often you'll find that these Japanese G-Biru brewery beers are very, very drinkable, but they've still got quite a bit of flavour in them. So keep that in mind when you try things like this. But straight away with this beer, you can smell that nice, wheaty, white bready base. You can get a little bit of the kind of clovey spice on top of it. Definitely, there's a little bit of a, you know, the banana flavours and the sort of bubblegummy notes in the aroma, or aromas I should say, not flavours. The banana notes really come out in this one. They're quite pungent along with the candied side of the beer in this one. This one, in some ways, I had a really good Hefeweizen from a brewery in Hiroshima, and it was the Fune brewery or something like that, the boat brewery. They had the little boats on it, and that's probably the best Hefeweizen I've had from a G-Biru brewery in Japan. But I can tell you, going by the aroma of this one, I think this one might turn out really nicely. I also had a very good German Dunkel from a brewery up in Hokkaido, but I think that was a German brewer who was employed there in brewing it. So yeah, some of these GB beers, if you're into traditional German beer like me, quite often you can find some really good examples of traditional German style beers being brewed in Japan, which is quite funny actually. But yeah, this one comes across with a really full aroma. As I said before, when it comes to Hefeweizens, I find this one is a little bit more kind of bubblegummy and candied and stuff like that, but the underside of it is very kind of smooth, and the wheat note smells a little bit lighter in this one compared to some other ones, but it has everything you would expect of the aroma from a Hefeweizen. A little bit of a bubble gum, definitely some sort of bready, yeasty kind of doughy notes in there, some clovey spice, and also that lovely kind of wheaty, bready base to it. So yeah, that's really interesting. One of the things to also note about these Hefeweizens is that the base of a Hefeweizen is, I'm sure it's usually about 60% pale malt, 40% wheat malt. It's actually not as much wheat malt as you might think, to be honest with you, because otherwise the thing would be massively thick. But I do suspect with some of these German ones, or some of these Japanese ones rather, that they put a little bit of Pilsner malt in it to give the beer just that bit of crispness that the Japanese would expect. In terms of the hoppy side of things, it's quite obviously noble hops that are in here. German noble hops like Hallertau, Tettnanger. It could be Czech Sats or even Slovenian Dana or something like that that's in here though, but definitely that sort of noble quality. Polish Lubelski would be another one. So there's a teeny little bit of earthiness to it, but mainly it's a nice kind of floral aromatic note, quite a bright floral aromatic note, and some lighter grassy qualities as well. On the fruity side of things, as I mentioned, you get the sort of banana notes, but that's coming mainly from the yeast. Maybe a wee bit of an apricot, something like that, and some apple and peary sort of esters as well in there. But overall, the aroma of this one comes across quite nicely. If you are a fan of German Hefeweizens, this one is definitely not going to look out of place to you. So yeah, just take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But we're going to see how we get on with this one. I think this will be quite an interesting beer actually, and hopefully this is another good German style beer from Japan. I always enjoy finding these. So anyway, this one is the Soleil from the Shiranui Roman beer range at Fukuda Farm Winery in Minamata, Kumamoto Prefecture on Kyushu in Japan. A 5% Hefeweizen, and hopefully it's another good one. Let's get stuck into this. Sláinte, skål, kampai. That's pretty nice actually. It's very smooth, I have to say. This is one of the more oily Jibiru beers that I've come across in Japan actually. This one has all the flavours that you'd expect of a German Hefeweizen, but like I said, and this is quite a common thing with the Japanese beers, it's just the mouthfeels are a little bit different. So Kyushu has very good water because it's quite a mountainous part of Japan, especially. I think Kumamoto is actually Kumamoto is right on the edge of the kind of big bay at the bottom of the island. So it's not surprising that they've got pretty good water in this beer. You can taste the water quality is very good. Of course, as a Scot, you know, we're quite sensitive to that because of the whiskies and things. But you find the same if you go up to Hokkaido, the North Island in Japan. It's a beautiful place that. Very good water, good whisky up there as well. So yeah, that's a really nice, it is quite a nice drinkable beer, this one. It's got all the flavour you'd expect, but the mouthfeel is just that little bit wetter. That's my first impression of it. So let's try and break this beer down a little bit then. So, middle of your palate, straight away you're going to feel that nice, wheaty, white bready sort of thing. That blankets the middle of your palate. The further you go into the aftertaste, you can feel that becoming a little bit more crisp. I do suspect there's a bit of Pilsner malt in here. I think they have used a bit of Pilsner malt just to crispen this beer up a little bit. But then in the middle of your palate you do get a little bit of that kind of clovey spice kind of thing, and then as you move further forward, that's where you get the kind of doughy, yeasty qualities in there, and you can feel the further that you go into the aftertaste with this one, that's when you start to get the kind of bubblegum type flavours out of this beer. So I mean, yeah, This one is really quite nice, and there's no, I've managed to get all the sediment out of this one pretty much, because it was in the fridge for about a month or so, so I did manage to get all the sediment out of this into the thing. I kind of rolled it around a little bit before filming the review for you, so it won't have sedimented out. But this beer, compared to the German Hefeweizens, it has a really nice it really has a very nice kind of drinkability to it, this one. One of the things, before I lived in Germany, I used to love Hefeweizen, but then when I went over to Germany, I really got into the Dunkels and the Helles beers, and some of the Bocks as well, actually. And I just, you know, that beer style, I found that the Hefeweizens after drinking those were very, very heavy, and there was people that could session those Hefeweizens, whereas after that, I could only really drink one, and it's a beer style that I enjoy visiting every so often now, rather than drinking as a sessionable beer. But this, you know, some of these Japanese ones, they kind of show you that they could, that this is a style that can be done in a very sessionable way. So that's something that I do like about this beer, is just the sessionability of it, because I do like the flavour profile that you get from the wheat beers. But it's just, I always find them very heavy, but this one has found a nice drinkability. But again, that's what I said to you is one of the traits of Japanese craft beer or Japanese G beer. But yeah, the thing I should say, for those of you that are watching a Japanese review for the first time, in Japan, G just means like local, so you would say like, yeah, G biru is like local beer, essentially. So, and usually a lot of people that talk about the Japanese craft beer scene talk about G biru breweries, which are the little ones that popped up in the kind of mid-90s, and then you've got the craft breweries, which are the newer ones that are brewing the more American style beer. Most of the G biru breweries, as I said, brew German things. Some of them brew a few English things too, and also some Belgian stuff, but mainly it's German style beer that is G beer, if that makes sense. But yeah, this is a really nice example of a very drinkable German Hefeweizen. It's got all the flavour you would expect, but it's nice and smooth. The Japanese, as I say, really value that drinkability when it comes to their beers. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there, which is, you know, it's that typical German noble earthiness that you would get from Hallertau or Tettnanger or something like that. But as you come further forward along the front sides of the tongue, you've got a little bit of a kind of quite bright floral aromaticity to this beer, and then round the very front curve of the tongue, you've got that lighter grassy element that you would expect. Very typical German noble hops out of this beer. Behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get that little oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. And for me, this one, it's pretty much, you know, apple and pears. There's a little bit, if you go further back on that oily bubble, there's a little bit of an apricot-y note, and that starts to merge together with the kind of banana-y flavours that you're getting from the yeasty elements in this beer. But, you know, overall, this is a really nice take on the German Hefeweizen. It's one of the nicer kind of G biru beers I think that you're going to come across. But then again, if you appreciate German beer, then a lot of these G biru beers that you're going to find over in Japan are pretty nice. There's a lot of Kulshis and stuff over there. There's a lot of Hefeweizens. You'll find a good few Dunkels and Schwarz beers and things like that as well. You'll find a whole host of things. One thing that they haven't really tried, I don't think, is gozes. I'd be curious to know if there are a few Japanese gozes on the go and things like that over there. That would be kind of interesting. But as a Hefeweizen, this is a really nice, quite light, drinkable example. It's got the flavour profile you'd expect. It just feels that little bit lighter. So let's focus on that mouthfeel now then. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel, overall I'd describe this beer as quite mid-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth on this one. It's definitely one of the more oily Hefeweizens that I've come across, but it still has a little bit of that wetness to it, and I think the oiliness actually helps bring out some of the wheat in this beer, and the wheat comes across as very smooth, but it does have a lot of candied quality to it, I think. On the hoppy side of things, I think we're talking maybe about 15 IBUs, maybe 20 IBUs in this beer. The Hefeweizen style is always very low in terms of its IBUs. The malt base, like I say, is very smooth, but also a little bit sweet the further you go with it as well, and you've got some nice juicy fruity esters in there also. So overall, a really nice take on the German Hefeweizen. I like the oiliness of this beer. and I like the drinkability about it as well, so it gets a thumbs up from me. If I saw that again, I wouldn't hesitate to drink it. It'd be cool actually to go to their restaurant and try it on tap and see what it's like, so maybe that's something we can do. I might do that at some point in the future actually. I need to work on my Japanese a little bit more for that, but yeah, definitely something that I would like to do at some point in the future. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Soleil from the Shiranui Roman beer range. A really nice, quite summery Hefeweizen, so I can see why they would have called it Soleil, actually. Of course, Soleil is French for sun, if I remember correctly, or sunny. But yeah, it's a nice beer, this one, and definitely worth trying if you enjoy the style and you enjoy the traditional German beers like me, actually. I'd love to go to Japan with Peter from the Clueless Drinker, actually, and let him try some of these G-Biru brewery beers, because I think some of them are actually pretty nicely done. But yeah, this one comes to you from the Fukuda Farm Winery in Minamata in Kumamoto Prefecture in the south of Japan on Kyushu Island. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from the Shiranui Roman beer range, and let me know how the wines are from Fukuda Farm Winery as well. That would be interesting. The Japanese do have some very, very nice red wine. I've not tried so much of the white, but the red wine in Japan is really quite nice, mainly because of the volcanic soil that they have. But a really nice, by the looks of it on the website, a really nice little place as well. Kyushu is very nice, and I would recommend that you go and check that out for yourselves as well. So yeah, until the next time, Slanger just now, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Soleil, a 5.0% sorry, Hefeweizen from the Shiranui Roman beer range at Fukuda Farm Winery in Minamata, Kumamoto on Kyushu in Japan. Slanger, Skull, Kampai, make sure you check out this brewery if you get the chance. Cheers.